Good morning, everybody. We have a new chapter in our 13 colonies unit that we're going to go through today, specifically focusing in south of the Carolinas to on Georgia today. Have any of you been to Georgia before? Just north of Florida. So we have heard about Maryland, Virginia, North and South Carolina all grouped together in the last chapter, even though we were specifically focusing on South Carolina and Charleston. And now we're making our way a little further south, this most southern colony of Georgia. This is a very short chapter, so we are going to have a chapter and notes on the same day, just like yesterday. So let's hear about the colony of Georgia. The voyage to Savannah. Now, the year was 1732, and the ship was called the Anne. It was a very crowded ship with 120 passengers and many animals. Most of the people on the Anne were poor and unable to find work in England. Now, there was, however, one very wealthy gentleman on the ship. His name was James Oglethorpe. Everyone called him Father Oglethorpe because he was kind and gentle. Now, James Oglethorpe was the leader of the new colony named Georgia in honor of King George II. It was the last of the southern colonies to be established. Now, James Oglethorpe was born into a wealthy family. When he was a teenager, he joined the English army. He became captain of the Queen's Guard. He left the army when he was 26 to become a member of Parliament. Now, he spoke out for poor people and for people jailed because they could not pay their debts. So at 26 years old, he became a member of the Parliament, which we've talked about recently because it was a spelling word for us. A group of representatives and the king or queen who make the laws for a country. So the sovereign, the king or queen, is part of Parliament, but also there are common people who are part of it and the people from the wealthy class. So it's also a term used in general for somebody who's like the lawmaking branch of government. Now, he spoke out for poor people and people who went to jail because they could not pay their debts, which sometimes is a person's fault, and other times it's not their fault. So he specifically was speaking out for poor people who couldn't pay their debts. In England, it said people often went to jail for a long time if they could not pay their debts. And sometimes they were there until they died, just because they weren't able to pay off those debts. So at the time, people in England who did not have enough money to pay their debts were put into jail. James Oglethorpe wanted to find a way to give debtors and all poor people a fresh new start. Now, he and a group of businessmen asked the king to let them start a colony in North America. They asked him to make the colony a place for poor people to begin a new life. So this is a different start than we've seen. We've seen some people who come over to become wealthy with farming. We've heard about, like in Maryland, that it was for religious reasons to have a freedom. But in this case, it's really specifically to have poor people have a fresh start, and they don't have to worry about their debts, and they wouldn't go to jail. They would just move to this new place and start over. Now, if they make bad decisions, then they could get into debt again and be in legal problems. But maybe they're going to change and really have good patterns moving forward. So James Oglethorpe dreamed of building a great city for the Georgia colony. He brought in a city planner to design the new city of Savannah. The streets were wide and straight, and there were many parks. Here's him showing respect to a Native American who's nearby. Now, Oglethorpe had many other dreams for the colony. He dreamed of making the Georgia colony a refuge for poor people and for people of different religions from all parts of Europe. He also wanted to keep the colony free of slavery. He had been to Charleston before, where he saw how badly enslaved workers were treated. So that's good for him, and it aligns with the fact that he was standing up for poor people and wanting a fresh start for them. And he also was saying what's much, much worse than people going to jail for not paying off their debts are people who were enslaved as workers and didn't have freedom. And as you can see here, some of them were treated so, so badly. So he believed Native Americans should also be treated fairly and with respect. Wow. He stands up for everybody and wants equal treatment for everybody. Native Americans, for these enslaved workers, knowing there should not be any enslaved workers. And he also is saying that they're, for the poor people, they shouldn't be in jail for the rest of their life. They should have ways of being able to pay off those debts and not just go to jail for it for years. So he made a rule that no white man may cheat the Native Americans. Good rule. Some of these Native Americans, they got kind of cheated out of some of their land by like these Englishmen coming over and paying really cheap prices, but the Native Americans didn't know any better. So they shouldn't cheat any of the Native Americans. The Native Americans called James Oglethorpe the Great Man. They called him that to show their respect for him. I think that's a fitting title for him. He stands up for saying no to having any slavery in Georgia. He is saying Native Americans need to be treated equally and with respect. And he stands up for poor people. Those are really great things for him to do. Now, some of Oglethorpe's dreams did not come true. Parliament made it hard for poor people who owed money to leave English jails and settle in Georgia. Rice turned out to be the only crop that could be grown in Georgia and sold for a profit. And to grow rice, many workers were needed. In 1750, the leaders of Georgia decided to change the rules. Slavery and big rice plantations were now allowed, just as they were in the Carolina County. So it started off as a place for poor people to be able to have a fresh start and work hard and have freedom. And then it shifted, sadly, and it's becoming just like South Carolina with plantations and with these enslaved workers being brought in through the transatlantic trade. So sadly, it did shift back. Now, that's the majority of the states that we're going to be seeing in our history book that are affected by bringing in these enslaved workers. As we're moving into the New England colonies up here, it was not the case because the farm situation was different and their land situation was different. So they weren't really desiring those big plantations and a lot of workers to help on them, or sadly not just help, but like do all of the work and not get paid. So New England is set up very different. We'll be looking into that as we transition into chapter 9 tomorrow. So you've got a few notes to take on this, and I hope that you are enjoying our 13 colonies unit and learning a lot. I will talk to you all later. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.